Hello and welcome to FU Cancer at Mike's Journey. This is episode number 4. Today I want to talk about sugar starvation. You remember the other day I had the whiteboard and I had the 4-pronged approach at my attempt to overcome cancer. And the very first item on that list was sugar starvation. Now, that's not the only thing that, like I said that day, everything intertwines. So sugar starvation is the highest priority for me right now. And I'm going to explain why, I'm going to explain where the theory came from, I'm going to give a bit of a biology lesson as to how we can live without having sugar, and I'm going to let you in on how I keep sugar out of my body. Because even though I talked about limiting the number of carbs and the number of sugars that I take, there's more to it than that, and I just want to get into a little more detail of what is actually going on. So if you go down to the beginning of my Facebook page, you'll notice that there's a link there to a guy named Dr. Otto Warburg. And Dr. Warburg, he made a pretty astounding discovery in 1923, and it ties into what I'm talking about today. And the discovery that he made was that if you have cancer cells and regular cells, and you take away oxygen, well, the regular cells died off, but he discovered that the cancer cells, they didn't really care too much if there wasn't oxygen there. And if there was an acidic environment, they actually thrive. So we know that today, that we know that cancer thrives in acidic bodies. There's no question about that today. But in 1923, that was a huge discovery, and it laid the foundation work for building blocks for years and years to come, even up until today. And Dr. Warburg, he did go on to win a Nobel Prize for that discovery in 1933, and went on to win another award as well. And it's worth looking the guy up. It's W-A-R-B-U-R-G. If you Google him, there's all kinds of information about this guy. But I just want to go over, this is my biology lesson time. I just want to go over the process of sugar conversion to energy. So I think we all understand that we take in food, we have sugar, and it converts to energy. But to clear up how that process works, I just wanted to explain there's a biochemical reaction that takes place, and we actually come up with this molecule. This is the molecule that feeds your cell. This is the molecule that a cell needs to live. It's not sugar, it's not food, it's a molecule. It gets spent by the cell that it's feeding, and there's byproducts out of that. So that's the process of converting energy. There's many different ways that we can get to that molecule. The most common way in almost everybody is sugar conversion. It's called glycolysis. So the next way to make that biochemical conversion is through carbohydrates. So sugar is an easy way. It's the one preferred because there's no resistance. But if there's no sugar available, you go into carbohydrates and you make a carbohydrates conversion, and that you get that same molecule. What I'm doing is I'm trying to get fat stores to make that conversion into this molecule to feed my cells. And the reason for that is because of the byproducts. So you can think of that molecule goes into a cell, feeds the cell. Well, then there's all kinds of byproducts out of that. There's proteins, there's decay, there's acids, there's all kinds of stuff that come off that because the molecules change. You've spent the energy in it. When you use sugar, it's quite incredible because the byproduct becomes it's lactate, and becomes, if you have too much of it, it's called lactic acidosis. Now, oddly enough, a cancer cell, just by nature, uses 19 times more energy to stay alive. So it takes so much sugar energy for a cancer cell to live and succeed in its regeneration. What else is interesting is, just like what we discussed in the beginning with Dr. Warburg, was that if there's oxygen in the area and there's no sugar and the acid is reduced, cancer cells can't survive. Cancer cells can't use fat to transform into energy. They just don't have that possibility. So this is why it's important for me to get into this state. And just to put it into a simpler term, let's just say you're driving a car, and for your sugar source or your fuel source in the car's analogy, you're going to put in 10W40 oil. Let's just say the car's going to run along fine, so you'd be driving down and you got no exhaust, or you got no emissions, no muffler, no filter. You're just driving along in your car, everything's going along great, and you're not really paying attention. You look at the back window, there's this big black toxic plume. That's the comparison with sugar for my body. With carbohydrates, the next easiest, that'd be like taking that car and now you've filled it up with diesel fuel. You've taken away the filter, you've taken away any kind of muffler, and you're driving down the road, and same thing. Not everything's running along tickety-boo. You look out the back window, there's a plume of black smoke. It's not as bad as with the 10W40, but there's still a big plume of black smoke. So let's just say that you're going to use, in the case of having fat burning, let's say you're going to burn natural gas. You're driving down the road, you look out the back window, well, there's nothing there. The only thing that comes out of natural gas is a little drip of water. That's the comparison between burning sugar for fuel versus burning fat for fuel. The other interesting thing about burning fat for fuel is that it's got so much energy stored in it. There's actually 14,000 calories stored in 1 gram of fat. Comparison, there's 4,000 calories in 1 gram of a carbohydrate. So your fat stores can provide a lot of energy for a long time. So actually depriving your body of sugar is not harmful in my case. Now, if you're diabetic or you have any kind of sign of diabetic, then you don't want to try this, obviously. This would be a very, very dangerous approach for you to make. So the name of that process that I'm talking about from fat conversion is beta oxidization. And again, remember, cancer cells consume so much sugar energy, so in that energy, they have that byproduct of acid and lactic acid. So lactic acid, if you had lactic acid in your whole body, it'd be extremely dangerous. But it's not too big a stretch to think that you couldn't have lactic acid in a cancerous area. Well, what did we say at the beginning of the show? Cancer thrives in an acidic environment and regular cells die off. So my approach to reducing this transformation from sugar is to eliminate the lactic acid buildup. And if I can stop that process, because now I'm using beta oxidization, I can stop the process of this byproduct getting out. I hope that my system would be a little more efficient. So when the vessel's going by picking up all this acid and all this nasty debris that's the byproduct of this transition, I can actually get rid of that, and now I can neutralize that acid state, and cancer cells hopefully will slow down or die off, and the regular cell split will happen in a greater number than the cancer cells. So that's my quick analogy of how that transformation, biochemical transformation, takes place. Now, what I have, like I said at the beginning, starving myself of sugar by itself and carbohydrates, that's not quite enough for me. And if I was going to do that process myself, it would take months to do what I'm trying to get into, the state that I'm trying to put my body into. So I do have a couple of products that I use. The one thing that I use, it's a drug similar to a diabetes drug. It's an actual blocker. So when sugar comes into my body, which I can't help, even if I said I was eating 0 sugar, 0 carbs, and I was just gonna have lettuce and chicken, there's sugar in lettuce and chicken, so you can't help but get sugar. But if I have this blocker, what happens is sugar comes in and the cell says, I'm not interested in you, I'm not using you. So I have this defense. And it's, like I said, it's the same defense as somebody that takes diabetic medication would have to regulate the sugar. I don't use it to regulate, I use it to stop. But that's not enough. I want to be more cautious than that. So I've got a couple of products, and I'm not endorsing anything at all, but I'm just showing you there's other types of products available. But I've got two other products that I use. This is, I got DCA, so it's sodium dichloroacetate, and you can just, if you look up DCA in cancer, you can find out all kinds of information about it. But the way it works, which is important, is this actually is another blocker. It's called a ketone, and we're going to talk about ketones more in the future with diet and whatnot. But these ketones are actually enabled, so it's another defense. It says, you know what, we're not using sugar, we're using fat, we don't want sugar in our neighborhood, and this kicks it out. Now, there are different types of ketones, and there's different types of sugar systems that I want to keep away from my body. So I've got the diabetic type medicine, I've got the DCA. Again, this is, I'm not endorsing this, this is just the product that I have. And I've got this powder. This is Keto OS. So these things you can buy in Canada. They're difficult to find. This you have to buy online, and you need a password to be able to buy this. But this does the same as the DCA, but you know, it attacks a whole different sugar chain. So those are the 3 things that I do, that I've done to my body to say, you know, sugar is not welcome here. And that's the reason being is not because of the sugar, but because of the byproduct behind when sugar breaks down. That's the gist of my story. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you followed along okay. We'll get into ketones, and I'll describe a little more detail of what that's all about tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much.